You don't do anything special that night. That's the part that will haunt you later. Not the words you said, but the words you didn't give her. The reaction you refused to play on command. You're sitting across from her, the glow of her phone screen lighting half her face while the room stays dim. She throws out a comment that used to hook you every time. Something about how other men chase her harder, how they know what they want, how you're too calm for someone like her. Once, that would have pulled you straight into the script. You defend yourself, raise your voice, compete with ghosts you never met. This time, you don't. You breathe. You watch. You stay where you are. You answer simply, okay. No sarcasm. No fight. Just a clean, steady line of sound that doesn't bend in her direction. At first, she doesn't process it. Her eyes keep moving like they're still searching for the old version of you in the air, shifting from your face to your hands to the floor and back again, as if somewhere there's the reaction she ordered but hasn't yet been delivered. The silence stretches. You see her posture start to shrink, not dramatically, not like a movie meltdown, but in small, almost invisible ways. Shoulders fold a little inward. Her spine curves. Her body retreats, even though her voice is about to move forward. When it hits her that you really won't play along, her voice rises before her mind catches up. Wow, that's it. Just okay. There's a brittle edge in the room now, thin but sharp enough to cut through both of you. It's not what you said that stings her. It's what your calm implies, that you're not begging, not chasing, not fixing. That you're no longer an actor reading from the script she's spent years rehearsing with different men. You watch her ego step up like a defensive shield. You see it in the way her jaw tightens, in the way she suddenly straightens her back just enough to look tall again, even though her body was shrinking moments ago. The ego doesn't like quiet. It doesn't like neutrality. The ego wants friction, so it can prove it's still in control. She starts listing things you've done wrong lately, reaching back weeks, months, pulling small moments into the light to justify why you're the problem. Her raised voice fills the room with an echo of certainty she doesn't actually feel inside. Every accusation is a stone she throws at the mirror, so she doesn't have to see her own reflection too clearly. But beneath the volume, you notice something else. A shadow behind the ego. It shows up in the micro-movements, the quick blink right after she says something cruel, the way her gaze flickers away when she feels she's gone too far, the brief pause when she almost softens but remembers she can't. That shadow is older than you. It's made of every time she felt ignored, unwanted, unseen. It surfaces now not because of who you are, but because you didn't move the way she needed you to move. You stay where you are. You don't match her raised voice. You don't mirror her shifting eyes. Instead, you become strangely still, like a reflective surface someone is arguing with. There's a moment when your presence stops feeling like a person and starts feeling like a mirror she's accidentally shouted into. In that reflective stillness, you see the pattern reveal itself. She doesn't panic when you do something terrible. She panics when you don't perform in a way that keeps her story intact. Her anger is not just anger. It's a shield for something more fragile, something that is terrified that if you don't react to her, maybe she doesn't matter as much as she thought. Maybe the power she believed she had over you is never as solid as it felt. You watch her lean on familiar tactics, sarcasm, mockery, the hint of humiliation, the subtle threat of walking away. But none of it lands the way it used to, because your stillness keeps reflecting everything back to her. For a brief second, you see it land. Her eyes stop shifting. They lock onto yours, and behind them, the shadow of her ego trembles. She is not just angry that you won't play along. She is terrified of what your refusal says about who she is when no one is feeding her emotional script. And in that quiet, in that suspended moment between her raised voice and your steady breathing, you begin to understand. This isn't just about you. This is about a pattern older than both of you. A pattern that lives in the space between her ego and the shadow standing just behind it, whispering that control is the only way not to disappear. The room stays still. Her voice hangs in the air, and somewhere inside, a storm begins to form. The story doesn't reset. It doesn't cut to a new scene. It just keeps moving like a long, slow camera pan around the same room, revealing angles you didn't see before. Her words keep coming, but now you're not just hearing them. You're watching what moves before them. The first thing that reacts isn't her face. It isn't her body. It's a shadow. You see it, even if you can't name it out loud. The shadow reacts first, flinching at the possibility that you're no longer orbiting around her emotions. That shadow lives in the part of her that learned love as performance, attention as currency, panic as leverage. The moment you step out of the familiar dance, it senses danger and rushes forward. Before she even decides what to say, her expression tightens, not dramatically, but like the surface of water hardening in cold air. The reflection of her in your mind begins to change. Her features sharpen. Her tone turns fast, clipped, restless. The reflection tightens because the story she holds about herself is tightening. I must not lose control here. I must win this moment. Emotions move ahead of logic like a wave outrunning the shore. By the time her mind begins to form explanations, you're distant. You don't care. Real men fight for women. Her body has already chosen a stance. Arms crossed, chin raised, eyes cold. The explanations are just subtitles added after the scene is already shot. You watch her eyes narrow as she tries to read you. But every second you stay calm makes the gap wider. The space between intention and response opens up like a hallway neither of you knew existed. In that space, all of her unspoken fears walk ahead of her. Fear of abandonment, fear of insignificance, fear that you might see through the performance and decide she isn't enough. She doesn't want you to see that hallway. So the shadow pushes her forward faster. She starts shifting the narrative. Now you're emotionally unavailable, too detached, not serious enough. She says you're not making an effort, yet the effort she demands is not about understanding. It's about compliance. What she wants is for you to step back into your old role, so her inner world doesn't have to rearrange itself. The more neutral you are, the louder her ego becomes. The more regulated you are, the more dysregulated she feels. It's not that she doesn't understand, on some distant level, that your calm is not an attack. But the shadow inside her is wired to believe that if a man doesn't react, he doesn't care. And if he doesn't care, then she is at risk. If she is at risk, she must regain control through tears, through anger, through making you feel guilty enough to move. You begin to notice how her reactions don't actually match your intentions. You didn't say, "You're worthless." You didn't say, "I'm leaving." You said, "Okay." You set a quiet boundary. But her reaction is not to what you did. It's to what your behavior symbolizes in her private history. Your silence is not silence to her. It's an echo of every time someone stopped chasing her and never came back. Your composure is not composure to her. It's the same stillness she felt right before emotional impact in past relationships. In the space between your intention and her response, an entire unseen film plays out in her subconscious. The scenes are stitched together from childhood, old lovers, humiliations she never processed. By the time she speaks, she's no longer talking to you alone. She's talking to every ghost standing behind you. The shadow reacts first, the ego follows, and her words become the soundtrack of a story that didn't start with you and won't end with you. When she panics because you won't play along, it's not just the present moment she's losing control over. It's the illusion that she can script every emotional outcome if she presses the right buttons. You realize that most of her energy is not directed at understanding you, but at controlling how she feels in relation to you. If you don't respond how she expects, she loses her grip on herself. So she tries to pull you back into the old game through accusations, comparisons, subtle threats of withdrawing affection, reminders of how other men would behave. She keeps talking, but the real movement is happening in that invisible corridor between intention and reaction. Her emotions sprint ahead, slamming doors behind them, while her logic limps behind, trying to come up with reasons that make this panic look justified. You stay still, and that stillness becomes a mirror again. The reflection tightens. There is less distance now between her and the shadow, but she still can't quite look it in the eye. What you're watching is not just a woman overreacting. You're watching a survival strategy that has been rehearsed for years, maybe decades. A script where panic is power, where emotional chaos is leverage, where losing control internally must be compensated by controlling the scene externally. And against that script, your refusal to play along is not neutrality. It is a disruption. It is a quiet, unnerving line in the sand that forces something else to happen, either escalation or realization. The storm is building, but something else is building with it. A pressure that can't be released by another argument, another raised voice, another shifting of blame. Something in her knows this. Something in you does too. The air feels different now. Not calmer yet, but heavier, like a storm that has finally reached its peak and doesn't know where to go next. Her voice starts to tire before her defenses do. The sharp edges soften, not because she surrendered, but because even panic has limits. She looks at you, really looks, as if trying to find some familiar crack in your demeanor that she can crawl back into. But your calm hasn't broken. Your emotional distance hasn't grown colder. It has simply stopped bending. The shouting fades into shorter sentences. Whatever. You never care. You're impossible to talk to. They land with less force now. Not because they're harmless, but because they no longer control the scene. The storm has spun so hard it's starting to exhaust itself. Inside you, something shifts. You stop seeing her as just dramatic. You start seeing the pattern. You notice how, beneath every attempt to humiliate you, there was fear. Beneath every accusation, there was a plea. Don't leave me alone with this feeling. Beneath every sharp word, a shaking hand that never learned how to ask for safety without triggering chaos. The shadow that stood behind her ego in the beginning of the night steps forward now. Not fully, not proudly, but just enough that you can sense it. It's in the way her shoulders drop for a second when she thinks you're not looking. It's in the way her eyes glisten with something other than rage, a flicker of confusion, maybe even regret. Your own reflection in this whole story begins to clear. You see that your old self, defensive, reactive, loud, wasn't just about her. It was your own ego shadow trying to prove it mattered, trying to win. When you refused to play along tonight, you weren't just setting a boundary with her. You were setting a boundary with the part of you that needed chaos to feel alive. The shadow inside you and the shadow inside her have been circling each other this whole time, using both of you as their stage. Now, for the first time, you see them. The storm starts to quiet, not because everything is fixed, but because awareness has entered the room. She looks away, then back at you, her tone lower, her words less scripted. I just don't get how you can be so calm, she says, and this time, there's no edge. Just confusion. You could weaponize this moment. You could gloat in your composure. Use it as proof of your superiority, humiliate her the way she tried to humiliate you. But something in you has shifted beyond that level of the game. You answer slowly. Because I'm done arguing just to prove I care. The words hang there, and for the first time, they don't bounce off her armor. The mirror between you begins to clear. She doesn't admit fault. She doesn't suddenly apologize or transform in front of you. But the emotional distance shrinks by a fraction. Enough for the truth to pass through. You see her breathing slow. You see her knees pull slightly inward, a small, vulnerable adjustment. You see the shadow inside her step back, not in defeat, but in recognition that it has been seen. The part of you that used to panic when she panic stays quiet. You realize you're no longer trying to control her reaction, nor run from it. You just see it, and in that seeing, your own shadow begins to merge with your conscious self. You are not just the calm mask or the furious defender. You are the one who can watch both without becoming either. The storm inside the room doesn't vanish. It dissipates. The metaphorical clouds thin. The thunder stops trying to impress itself. She leans back in her chair, arms no longer crossed as tightly. What are we even doing? She says, half to you, half to herself. You don't rush to answer. The mirror is clearer now, and in it, you see two people. Not a villain and a victim, not a manipulator and a saint, but two nervous systems trying to protect old wounds with familiar weapons. You recognize the deeper pattern, not as something wrong with modern women in an abstract way, but as a dance between ego and fear, between control and connection. You see how often she has learned that panic gets a quicker response than honesty, how much the world has rewarded her drama and ignored her quiet. You also see your own history, the times you surrendered your boundaries for peace, the times you played along just to avoid this very moment of rupture. Tonight, you didn't. Tonight, you held the line. The shadow inside you and the shadow inside her don't disappear. They step closer to the light. Resolution doesn't look like a perfect conversation or a neat apology. It looks like this: the storm quieting, the mirror clearing, the emotional distance shrinking just enough for a new choice to become possible. Maybe she'll repeat this pattern again. Maybe you will too. But something irreversible has happened. You've seen the machinery underneath the reaction. You've watched how she panics when you don't play along, and instead of being dragged into it or running from it, you stayed present. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Not in her, not in yourself. That's where the real shift begins. Not in changing her, but in refusing to abandon yourself every time the shadow and someone else starts to scream.